ahead and get started. If everyone's ready, I think we're missing a few people, but not too many. And has been very gracious agreeing to speak to us this afternoon. This is Ann Phillips. And as we get started with our FOIA and COIA training for technical advisory subcommittee chairs, vice chairs, and staff, I'll pass this to Secretary Matt Strickler, who'd like to make a few words, say a few words. Thank you, Matt.
All right. Thank you, and thanks, Justin, for doing this for us. And thanks to all of the subcommittee chairs, vice chairs, staff who are with us today to go through this really important training. And I say that with no irony and without tongue-in-cheek. It's really critical that we understand and follow our Freedom of Information Act and Conflicts of Interest Act rules, and that's what this training is for. Some of you may have had something similar or identical before, but it's never a bad idea to get a refresher. We've got a lot of moving parts with the subcommittees and with the full TAC, and this becomes even more challenging when we're all now fairly used to working in a virtual environment, knowing the rules of the road as far as what we are and aren't allowed to do over email and various and sundry other platforms like Google Drive and stuff without the public present is really, really important, just to make sure that we are able to stay on track with our work and stay on the right side of the law and importantly, on the right side of public opinion as far as how transparent we're being. So I don't have a whole lot to say. There's obviously, some important work here to do today that I don't really have a big role to play in, but I just wanted to say hi and say thanks again, and bear with us through this, and we'll get to the real work of the subcommittees and the committee soon. Thanks.
Thank you, Secretary Strickler. I think what I'd like to do now is pass the control to Justin Bell from the Office of the Attorney General, who will deliver the training for us today, and then take your questions at the end. Justin, over to you.
Great. Hey, thanks, Ann. My name is Justin Bell. I'm Assistant Attorney General with the Attorney General's Office, and I get kind of pulled in to do these trainings quite a bit. So hopefully we can cover a lot of ground. There's a lot of pitfalls you can run into, even unintentionally. And the goal here today is for you guys to leave with a comfort level and a working knowledge that'll allow you to be able to navigate your duties without falling into these pitfalls. We're still trying to work out exactly how we're going to present these, because my office has blocked the WebEx app, so I might need Katie to be the presenter, and I can just narrate. Do you think that'll work, Katie?
Yes, it will. Just let me get it pulled up.
Great. Let's do the COIA first. We can knock that one out, and then we can spend a little more time getting into FOIA, which I think has a little more day-to-day application. Okay, looks like we are in business. Let's go ahead and get to the first real meat of the slides. I guess we are still lawyers, so I still have to give you the disclaimers and whatnot. So I'm not just going to read this to you. I'm going to point to the stuff that's the point the real focal point of each slide. So that bolded text in the middle there, this is kind of from the overview section. This is the attitude I want you to have as we go through the COIA training here. The citizens are entitled to be assured that the judgment of public officers and employees will be guided by a law that defines and prohibits inappropriate conflicts and requires disclosure of economic interests. So what does that mean for us today? Well, that's the goal of us, of our conduct here. We want to make sure we're operating in a way that is that allows the public to believe in the truth of what we're doing. That it allows the public to believe that we really have the best interest of the public at heart when we make our policies, when we take our actions, we're free from conflicts. And we'll talk about exactly what that means. Please take us forward. Okay, misuse of office. That's really the big one that the people get in trouble for, or I guess the highest level that you can get in trouble for. You can't accept anything of value in exchange for influencing you in the use of your office. Any opportunity where there's a reasonable likelihood that is being offered to influence you in the use of your office and advancing you or your family's economic interests through your use of office. You're additionally prohibited from participating in a transaction that being considered by the public body in which you have personal interest. So I want to point out two things about this. First, that reasonable likelihood that it is being offered to you to influence your decision, your action, it doesn't need to actually influence you. It's just the reasonable likelihood that it could influence you. So again, I want you to have that in the back of your mind as we're going through this training. It's not just the hard and fast rules that we're going to cover. It's getting close to those rules, those hardline rules. That's what we want to avoid. We want to avoid even the appearance of impropriety. Okay. And the other thing from the second sample there, a second quotation there, you can't have a personal interest in the work you're doing. And we'll talk about exactly what that means too. Please take us forward, Katie. Personal interest is a defined term, and I'm not going to read this whole thing because it's a wall of text, but I want to point something out to you guys. It can be a lot of different things. It can be perhaps even something that's not listed here explicitly, but it is ownership, drawing income that exceeds $5,000 from your interest in something, benefits that equal $5,000, et cetera, et cetera. So those are the ones that's pretty easy to define, right? If you're drawing money from something that you're working on, it's probably a situation that we're going to want to avoid. It's probably one we're going to need to declare, and you might even be disqualified from either that transaction you roll on the board here or in this commission. Okay, let's go forward. Personal interest in a contract, also a defined term. Personal interest that an officer or employee has in a contract with a governmental agency, whether due to his being a party to where the contract due, or due to a personal interest in the business that is party to the contract. So let's think about where this might get people in trouble. If you or your husband or wife owns a contracting company, and you advocate for a contract with that same company, you're going to be drawing a personal benefit from that, or benefit from that personal interest in a contract here. These are the kinds of things that'll get you in trouble. Let's go one more step forward, and then I'll take a break, and we'll get some questions from the panel here. Personal interest in a transaction. This is the other one. Transactions are again defined, and we'll talk more about that. But look again. Whereas pick an individual business and such property or business or representative served individual or business is the subject of the transaction or may be reasonably foreseeable direct or indirect benefit or detriment as a result of the action of an agency considering the transaction. So let's go through this again. So if your brother, if your son, if your close-knit family has owns a plot of land, and the plot of land is going to be increased because the value of the land is going to be increased because of a tax rate change or something that a board or agency might do, that could again turn around and get that person in trouble, that board member, for advocating for that. So again, just let's think about where we've been. Just in the last couple slides here. We're talking about personal interest in the work of a board or work of a government body like this one. We're talking about arrangements that are inappropriate. We're talking about family members, significant others. We're talking about the appearance of impropriety. Things like monetary benefit, things like interest in a company, things like foreseeable direct or indirect benefit. So that's kind of that's the intro. And I know I'm not covering every word that's on the screen, but I think we'll get into greater detail. I'm going to pause here. Anyone from the audience have any questions so far? Okay. Katie, please take us forward. Okay. This training breaks it down into two categories that I agree with. This is not my training, although I'm giving it to you. The only instances where you need to pay attention is where you or a member of your immediate family solicit, accept, or receive a gift where the gift is either from a lobbyist, a person or entity who hires a registered lobbyist, a person or entity who is seeking a contract with an agency over which you have authority to direct the activities of the agency, and the gift is valued $20 or more. Okay. Pretty easy to avoid that, I think. If someone's giving you something of value more than $20, you need to pay attention. It's under $20. It's not from a lobbyist or attached to a lobbyist or someone who's in the industry or attached to the industry of which you have oversight. You're probably okay just not even thinking about it and accepting it. When those two things combine, now you got to start paying attention a little more. Please take us forward. Gifts from personal friends. What does this mean? Okay. It doesn't really count if it's from your personal friend. You don't have to reject if you and a college buddy, you guys buy each other a bottle of your favorite liquor and it costs $50. You don't have to stop because you took a position with the government body. That's a close personal friend. It's the kind of thing that happened before. It's the kind of thing that is not supposed to be silenced or stopped by the Conflicts of Interest Act. And look at that larger paragraph. It kind of goes to the factors and how you determine whether it's going to be okay or not. The circumstances. Is it a birthday? Or is it a bribe? The history of the relationship between the person and the donor. The nature and the length of the friendship. It's like I said, if you're college buddies with this person, you've been doing the same gift exchange for 10 years, this is not the kind of thing that you need to worry about. Look at 3 and 4 here, Roman numerets 3 and 4. The extent the person or donor personally paid for the gift or sought a tax deduction or business reimbursement, whether the donor is given similar gifts the other person required. Again, if there's a history of gifts, you don't really have to worry about it. If it's your birthday, if you guys always exchange gifts at Hanukkah or at the end of Diwali or something, that's not what we're talking about here. Please take us forward. Okay. Now, here's where you start to get in trouble. It's with gifts that are in excess of $100 in a calendar year. Now, you have to aggregate the values of gifts over a year. So you can't give a series of $99 gifts every day of the week, and that somehow turns into a $10,000 bribe over a couple of months. No, that's not allowed. What you don't have to aggregate are gifts that are under $20. So if somebody buys you a Coke when you guys go out to when you guys just randomly see each other, you guys have a public meeting. The person sets up a table and there's refreshments of Cokes and Pepsis. You don't have to count how how many $1.60 bottles of sodas you had over the course of several meetings. That's not how it works. We're talking about gifts. We're talking about things that are over $20. We're thinking about things that aggregate over $100. Okay, and again, same thing. Lobbyists, employees of lobbyists, are seeking a contract with the public body. I don't think you're going to be doing much contracting, so you're probably not going to worry about that as much. Let's go forward. Okay, travel. You may accept travel, including reimbursement for travel, lodging, hospitality, but you have to go to the Conflicts of Interest Council, and you have to receive approval. This also must be reported on a disclosed form. There are forms all over this. So I'll tell you what, if somebody's talking about reimbursing you for your expenses related to travel, we're booking you a hotel or something related to this work, I want you to go through your contacts with the governor's office to clear it first. And they can kind of do the conflicts check for you, including going to the council and make sure this is the sort of thing that's approved, so you don't really have to worry about this. Otherwise, let's not worry too much about travel. Let's just not accept them freehand. Let's go to the governor's office first, and we'll do it that way. Okay, let's go forward. I talked about this before. If there's let's say that there's a big conference and everyone's going to travel to this conference, and there's going to be a bunch of dinners that are given to every one of the attendees. The total cost of the dinner is going to be well over $100. Let's say it's 4 dinners. It's going to 4 dinners over 4 days. It can easily be $200 worth of food and drinks. And maybe there's also a speaker or something there. The cost of admission. Let's just say it all totals. It would normally total up to being $500 or something like that. As long as you go through this disclosure form, as long as you clear it with the governor's office, that's going to be accepted while in attendance at a widely attended event. Okay, so you can't just be wined and dined, but there is a certain amount of recompense you can take as long as it's with this. It's associated with the event and it's received while in attendance. There's a little bit more to that wrinkle, but again, let's go through the disclosure form. Let's go through the governor's office, and you won't even have to worry about it. I'm going to pause here, see if there's any questions. I'm sorry this is very dry, but COIA is not fun. COIA is quite serious. I'm just trying to make sure we kind of exhaust it. Any questions? Okay, let's go through. This is just defining what a widely attended event is. See the catch number there is 25. It's open to event who are members, open to the public who are members of a charitable civil organization or professional organization. You can imagine like a conference of engineers or something, or maybe the bar association, something like that. That's typically where people are accepting these reimbursements or these gifts that are part of a widely attended event. These things are still allowed. Okay, let's go forward. Okay, let's be honest here. If a foreign dignitary is going to offer you a gift, we've got a lot of things going on. Just call somebody from the governor's office. Don't accept custody of it. Don't say drop it off at my office. Don't give them your address. Just you hang up the phone, pick up the phone, call whomever you can from the governor's office, and leave it off at that. Don't even worry about it. Let's go forward. Okay. Here's where the penalty starts to come into play. If you don't file your disclosures as you're supposed to, you will be assessed a civil penalty in the amount equal to $250. And that's that should be by any Commonwealth attorney. Let's go forward. Okay, here's where it gets tough. The standard for COIA is, well, in this case, is a knowing violation. Any person who makes a knowing violation of COIA shall be guilty of a Class 1 misdemeanor, shall be guilty of a malfeasance in office, and shall be subject to a civil penalty in an amount equal to the money or the thing of value received as such a violation. And the money or thing of value is forfeited. Okay. A knowing violation is one in which the person engages in conduct, performs an act, or refuses to perform an act when he knows when the conduct is prohibited or required by COIA. So if the value of the contract is $10,000, you forfeit the contract, you might be assessed a penalty of $10,000, and you're guilty of a Class 1 misdemeanor, which may be jail time. So crime doesn't pay. Make sure you fill out your forms. Make sure you're checking with staff. Make sure you do this before you accept the action, accept the offer, before you take the action, because there really isn't a way to sanitize COIA violation. Pause there. Any question? Katie, please take us forward. Now, I told you it was bad before. Here's where it gets worse. The chapter shall be liberally construed to accomplish this purpose. And I want you to pair it with the text below from 3001.1. Let's skip to that bold text at the very bottom there. Oh no, so I've taken you too far. Let's do in person. Now I can read that for you. Any person required to file a disclosure statement of a personal interest pursuant to the code shall be furnished by the public body's administrator a copy of this chapter within 2 weeks following the person's election, re-election, appointment, or reappointment. All officers and employees shall read and familiarize themselves with the provision of this chapter. Okay. I asked staff here to share with you a PDF of the COIA Act. That you're supposed to get that within 2 weeks of you accepting your appointment onto this committee. And you're supposed to familiarize yourself with that. Let's combine that with the previous slide. If the liberal construction here combines with the duty to familiarize yourselves with the provision of this chapter, a knowing violation means it's going to be assumed that you have read and have familiarized yourself with this code, with the COIA Act. That means the burden is going to be on you to show that you didn't know what you did was wrong. In other words, if the deck is going to be stacked against you if it ever goes to court. If anybody ever brings this up, it's going to be on you to show somehow that the facts were such that you could not have possibly known that your brother's company bid for this contract, that the policy you were working on was going to result in money in the pocket of your husband or whoever it is. In other words, you really got to take some time and just sit down with the PDF I had sent to you. I actually sent to you. You got to familiarize yourself with it. You got to put the time in to make sure you understand it, because it's not easy to violate COIA, but once you have, it's very hard to say that you shouldn't be punished for it. And that's kind of why you're here today, to get this training here. I'm going to pause here again. Anybody have any questions? Okay, please take us forward. So we talked about this, how any contract made in violation of FOIA may be declared void, may be rescinded by the governing body of the contracting or selling government agency within 5 years of the date of such contract. So it will follow you. The duty follows. You. The penalties follow you. You can't just kind of slink away into the night. Please take us forward. Okay. Now here's your out. You cannot be prosecuted for a knowing violation of FOIA if the violation resulted in a good faith reliance on either a written opinion of the Attorney General, a formal or written informal advice of the FOIA counsel made in response to his written request for such an opinion or advice. The opinion or advice was made after full disclosure of the facts, and if the advice or opinion is withdrawn, it can only be relied upon for acts or omissions occurring after its issuance and before its withdrawal. So let's put that in plain English. If something's fishy or you're unsure about it, and you ask for help from the proper authority, and you get the advice that says that what you're doing is not in violation of FOIA, you've got a shield as long as that advice isn't withdrawn. Like I said, if you got something, come back to staff and we can formulate a request either to the Attorney General's office or the FOIA Council and make sure that everyone is protected as they should be. I'll pause there again. Question. All right, let's go forward. That might be the end of it. So, any thoughts, any questions, comments before we go into FOIA? Anybody need a bathroom break? All right, Katie. If nobody has any questions, let's jump into FOIA. Please put up the FOIA presentation. This one's a little longer, so now that I think about it, why don't we take a short break? By my clock, it's 3:33. Let's come back in 3 minutes at 3:36. If you don't have anything you need a break for, just stand up from your desk and stretch your legs, and we'll be back in 3 minutes. Okay, Katie, by my clock, it is 3:36. Hopefully everyone has had a chance to refresh their beverage and they're back and ready to go for our FOIA training. This will be a little more lively, I promise.
Okay, let's get started.
Great. Understanding FOIA, or how I learned to stop worrying and love open government. This might look familiar. This is the same language or similar language to what we saw in COIA. Any person elected, re-elected, appointed, or reappointed to any body not accepted from this chapter shall be furnished by the public body's administrator or legal counsel with a copy of this chapter within 2 weeks following election, re-election, appointment, or reappointment, and read and become familiar with the provisions of this chapter. Same idea as before. That's why I asked staff to give you a copy of FOIA. It is a dry bit of reading, but the law says you got to read it. Sorry, but you got some homework this weekend. You got 2 entire chapters of law to read. But with this one, you'll at least know what you're reading when you see it. Let's go forward. Again, the bolded text is what I want you to pay attention to. The affairs of government are not intended to be conducted in an atmosphere of secrecy, since at all times the public is to be the beneficiary of any action taken at any level of government. Straight from the code, that's the purpose, that's the policy of FOIA. Let's go one more forward. How FOIA is to be viewed. Provisions of FOIA shall be liberally construed to promote increased awareness by all persons of governmental activities and afford every opportunity to citizens to witness the operations of government. Okay, this kind of forms the platform that I want you to keep in mind as we go through the FOIA Act. It's supposed to be liberally construed in a way that increases access and awareness of the public. You're supposed to, it's going to be assumed that you're aware of FOIA and how it works. And it's supposed to be, it's supposed to promote open government at every level to any citizen who might want to put their eyes on it, might want to be involved. Okay, let's go forward. The 2 major pillars of FOIA are public records and meetings. That's really all FOIA is. Let's go forward and let's knock out one of these pillars. Public records. If you look at that language, let's see what that means. All records shall be open to inspection and copying by any citizen of the Commonwealth during the regular office hours of the custodian of such record. Access shall not be denied. Pretty simple. Let's go forward and see what that means. What is a public record? All writings and recordings, however they are stored, regardless of physical form or characteristics, in the possession of a public body or its officers, employees, or agents in the transaction of business. So if you look at the rest of the text on your screen right now, I want you to just realize and take away from it this. If it exists in some written form, digital, paper, otherwise, it probably is a public record. That's how you're supposed to read this. That's the liberal construction of this. And if you keep that in mind, you'll be fine when it comes to identifying what is a public record. If it's related to your business, if it exists, if it is in writing, it's probably a public record. Even if it's not a writing, if it's an audio recording, it's still probably a record. A video recording, again, a record. So keep your mind open. Just if you can find it either in a folder or a database, it's probably a record. Okay, let's go forward. So the big reason it's important to identify a public record is that if somebody requests to see the record or make a copy of it, they have the right to do so. And to violate that, to deny them access to that record improperly, violates FOIA. And we'll talk about what that is. But any public body that is subject to FOIA, which is probably this one, You have 5 working days following the receipt of a request to provide one of the responses laid out in code, which is basically, here goes all the documents. I don't have those documents, but here's where you might find them. Here goes some of those documents for a valid reason. I only have part of them. Some of them are confidential or protected from FOIA, or have a shield from FOIA. But in general, if somebody asks for a record, it is their right as a Virginian to have access to it. It is then on the public body to identify a reason not to provide those records. Okay, let's talk about that a little more. What that means for you as a member of TAC here. Even though the public body might be the custodian, quote, of the record, you as a member of this committee are still under the shield, under the umbrella of FOIA. So let's say that you, in your duties, received an email that assigned you, or that delivered to you 2 PDFs of COIA and FOIA. That was probably related to your duties on this committee. So if somebody said, I want to see the email that delivered those PDFs to the board, to the TAC members, they probably have a right to have those emails. Pause there. Questions? Okay, let's go forward.
Wait, Justin, this is Ann Phillips. I have a question.
Yes.
So someone emails me and they want a document that, so if they want something that's simple that we've posted, like the minutes, that's an easy answer. But if it's a formal FOIA request, in other words, I want all the emails related to the meeting that where the first training was held for the Technical Advisory Committee subcommittee chairs on COIA and FOIA, I, as an officer of appointee of the governor, would forward that request to the governor's counsel, who would work. My understanding is that's what I would do, who would handle that. So as subcommittee members and TAC members, how is our council handled? Would we do the same thing in that context?
So the governor's office has, like any other public-facing office, has a FOIA officer who's probably listed out an internal FOIA procedure, and I can't tell you exactly what the governor's office procedure is. What I can tell you is, if you don't take action to respond to the FOIA request, that the failure to comply with FOIA is going to be on you personally. So if the procedure for TAC is report to whomever, then that's probably what the members need to do, but that is not the end of the process, right? But it's the end of the personal liability, I would say, for the member. So again, going through your examples, somebody says, I want these detailed records. It's going to take a couple of days to get them compiled. If you just sit on that request, and the person who's responsible for denying that request would be the office generally, TAC generally, and then you personally. We'll talk a little bit more about what that means too. But do you follow that?
Yes, but I think more broadly, if we by chance receive a direct FOIA request, it could happen. Please alert the staff of the office of the governor, and we will immediately alert counsel to ensure we understand the next steps.
I was hoping that's exactly what you said. Anybody else? Question? So I want to add another note here, because Ann just reminded me of something else. FOIA requests don't need to be formal. They don't need to be in writing. They don't need to cite the proper code section. Someone can just send you an email and say, I want this record. Give me the agenda for your last meeting. That's enough. They don't even need to be in writing. Someone could bump into you at the coffee shop. Hopefully they maintain social distance and they say, I heard you're on TAC. Can you give me a copy of the agenda? Now you can handle that in one of a number of different ways, but you can't just let it die with you. It can't just be ended with you. You've got to take some action, and that action is alerting staff. Saying to that person, I need your contact info so I can pass that on to staff. That's fine, but it can't just end with you.
So this is Louis at the Middle Peninsula PDC. I think most of the political subdivisions on this deal with FOIA requests fairly frequently. And by their very nature, unfortunately, in our line of work, they're mostly hostile, but sometimes you get a friendly FOIA request. If I was to receive one as a committee chair, is the commission body politic on notice for that FOIA request as well as the TAC, or is it only the TAC because we have been asked to work for the TAC? Meaning, if that FOIA request comes in and it's not clear that it's to the planning district commission body, if it's not directed to anybody, only by name, which political entity or both political entities are responsible for it?
So I'm going to take you back to that previous slide, or a slide a couple of slides back that talked about the liberal construction. I'm going to tell you, in the interest for your own interest, treat that like somebody going to the wrong kiosk at a well-run bank. You don't want somebody waiting in line at the bank and they finally get to the right line or to the front of the line. You don't want the person to feel like they were given a runaround by that person saying, get back in line, go to the other aisle, go to the other line. You're going to have to pass it on to staff anyways, so go ahead and pass it on to staff.
Thank you very much.
There you go. I'm going to circle back around to that point too, why it's best to handle it that way. Anybody else before we pick up and move on? Katie, please take us forward. Okay. If you violate FOIA, so if you improperly deny someone I probably should have covered this in the last slide. There's a ticking time bomb that is set, or timeline that is started when somebody makes a FOIA request. You have 5 days to turn around a response, whatever your response is. Yes, no, here's some of them. I'm claiming this exclusion, but there's a 5-day timeline which can be extended by taking certain action by that person just asking for it. So if you deny that person that request improperly, denial might also be not providing a response within 5 days. That could be a violation of FOIA. So if that person takes you to court, that person shall be entitled to recover reasonable costs, including costs and fees for expert witnesses, attorney's fees from the public body, if the petitioner substantially prevails in the merits of the case. And they don't have to win outright, just substantially prevail. And that could cost serious money, especially for bringing in expert witnesses and attorney's fees. Now, why would you need an expert witness? Why would you need an attorney fee if somebody just wants to see, copies of the agendas or copies of the minutes? Well, that's probably not where you're going to get the bulk of the fees. In some cases, we have a lot of different agencies, a lot of different public bodies. If somebody's trying to say, I want to see these financial spreadsheets, and it takes a forensic accountant to go through it and show that the wrong sorts of exclusion were claimed, or the wrong sorts of information was withheld, that could rack up quite a fee, a substantial fee. Same thing with attorney's fee. If it's a very technical case, if it's a very convoluted matter, it might take an attorney and an office of an attorney to discern what the proper exemptions were, what the proper response should have been. So costs can pile up in these cases pretty quickly. Quicker than you might think. And all it's going to do, an improper denial, is just going to cost the public money by improperly denying a member of the public access to a record that they had a right to. Let's go one step forward. Again, focus on that bolded text again. the court finds that the violation was willfully and knowingly made and shall impose upon such officer, employee, or member in his individual capacity a civil penalty. The first penalty has a minimum of $500 and a maximum of $2,000. For a second or subsequent violation, the penalty does accelerate. The floor is $2,000. The cap is $5,000. I always throw out the example of agendas. Let's say you guys meet 6 times in 2021. And somebody says, I want all, at the end of 2021, they say, I want all of your agendas. That should be 6 documents. If you don't respond in time, or if you improperly deny that request, that person goes to court and sues you because you didn't pass it on to staff. In court, they're going to be able to say that they were due 6 agendas that you denied them, and just hitting the midpoint of that first penalty, that's 6 individual violations. That would be $6,000 just because you didn't want to give somebody 6 agendas. So again, crime really doesn't pay here. I guess it's not criminal, but violating FOIA doesn't pay. The public has a right to it. There's no interest in denying someone access to records that they should have had access to in the first place. So it really doesn't make sense for you not to do what you're supposed to do and contact staff to get the process rolling. And again, I'm going to highlight individual capacity. These are not the fees that the person is due that will be paid out by the TAC, by the funding for TAC, by the governor's office. This would be you in your individual capacity. Your banking account is going to be drafted at $6,000. The pause here for questions. Okay, please take us forward. Now, I want you to understand how records work, how FOIA requests work, and how the public access to it works. Here was a fake email from me to Mike. Mike, I finished reviewing your draft in the pilot training case. I think it's ready to be filed. Let me know if you want to meet to discuss it. Also, I'm going to get some food. Did you want anything? Nothing crazy in this email, but here's how it works. If somebody makes a FOIA request to my office, to the Office of the Attorney General, asking for everything related to the pilot training case, this is a responsive document, meaning this person would get the entire email, the part that talks about the pilot training case, and me asking Mike if he wants to go get some food. Now, I don't really care if people know that me and Mike went to go get lunch. That's not salacious. That's not a problem. But every part of the record goes in. You don't just send in the relevant portion. Please take us forward. This is how it might get you in trouble. Here goes an email from me to Thanos. Thanos, I apologize for taking so long to get back to you. I was completing my work on the pilot training case. Thanks for allowing me to review your plan for the universe. I have taken the liberty to make some edits to your plan. When is the next meeting of your group? Thanks. Again, if somebody says, I want to see all your emails related to the pilot training case, this comes in. And now it looks like the Attorney General's Office of Virginia is helping Thanos destroy half of the known universe. If you look at your CC line, now we're involved with the Wicked Witch of the East, Lord Vader, Cruella de Vil, and a whole list of the worst of the worst of the worst. These are the kinds of things that get people in trouble. When you make snide or inappropriate remarks about people in the field, and those are public records. When you include things about one matter in discussions of another matter, and oops, we just leaked something that didn't need to see public revelation just yet. So, what's the lesson here? Be careful about what you put in your email. Be careful about which items are being discussed where, or even being mentioned. If you're talking about one thing, maybe don't talk about the other thing unless they're actually related. Question. Please take us forward. When is your email related to this board private? Anybody want to take a swing at that one?
Never.
Oh, fantastic. Was that Mr. Lawrence?
Yes, that's correct.
Perfect. Mr. Lawrence got that right. Assume your email related to this board is just never private. Assume every email you take in, every email you send, every document you come across, assume it is now a public document and use that to shape how you act in relation to your records, at least, while you're serving on this committee. I know I keep calling board because I'm in the business here. I have a bunch of boards and agencies. Okay, so when should you not use email? Well, kind of a trick question, right? When you don't want there to be a record of what you said. It's not about hiding something, but not everything is fit for publication at all times. Other boards deal with other boards and agencies. They might deal with sensitive information that might not be ready for publication. So you might not use email for your discussions. You might pick up the phone. You might meet with someone in person. And now I know we had a pandemic on, so you might meet using a video service like WebEx or something. But you're not required to create a record every time you take an action. In fact, a lot of times you might be throwing around rough ideas that you're not ready to present to the full board on your subcommittee. So maybe those are the times when on your subcommittees you don't pass around drafts yet until you're really ready to pass around the draft, or make a draft, or begin a draft, or something like that. I'm going to give you one more tip here, and we're going to take a break before we move on to meetings. Unless you have a government email account associated to your work on this public body, I'm going to suggest that you create a new email account just for your work while you're on TAC. It's not a perfect shield, but it'll keep you from crossing your personal or professional business in with your government body business. It can be something as simple as, I'm just going to use Mr. Lawrence here, Louis Lawrence, TAC at yahoo.com. It could be his TAC email. And he only does TAC stuff from this. He doesn't get emails about his nephew's baseball swing or anything on that email. He doesn't get his personal email there. Doesn't get his professional email there. It's just his TAC email. So that way he knows not to mix from that email. Pause for questions before we go forward. Katie, please take us forward.
So, Justin, this is Ann Phillips. I got another question. Is that a mandatory requirement or a recommended requirement?
No, that is a recommended requirement.
Okay.
And for those who, I'll explain it a little more. I have a .gov email. It's what I use for all of my client agencies. So I don't mix the streams. I don't use personal stuff from that email account, and I use professional. I do professional work from my personal account. So I don't run the risk of sending an email to my aunt that talks about a case I just worked on, and now all of a sudden there's a reason that a court might want to look at my personal email accounts. The better job you do for keeping them separate, the less likelihood there's going to be a bleed over, the less likelihood that stuff from those email servers end up in the public eye.
Great. Thank you.
Sure. Turning to meetings, hopefully we understand what a record is. Hopefully we understand that records are public, and we're going to assume they're public, and that the public has a right to see them. Hopefully we've gotten past that. We're going to turn to meetings now. Again, fairly simple concept. All meetings of public bodies shall be open except as provided in the code. When you do your reading of the rigidity code sections that we gave you, you'll see that there's quite a bit of exceptions to what is and is not a meeting, when the public must be included versus when they may be excluded. Let's go forward and we will learn all about that. So Again, same kind of thing as public records. Public bodies is a fairly inclusive definition. It includes the TAC itself and its subcommittees. So I want you to think about TAC as being a public body, and any division of TAC potentially being a public body as well. Please take us forward. So when are you having a meeting? Okay. I want you to look at that paragraph in front of you. It's really just a long sentence, but notice the word intent doesn't have anything to do with it. You don't need to intend to have a meeting to have a meeting. You can accidentally have a meeting, or unintentionally have a meeting, is probably a better way to put it. But the keys are, you can be meeting physically or electronically. You can be meeting as an assemblage or as the full body, as a subcommittee, but it's as many as 3, or magic number is 3, or a quorum if less than 3. We'll come back to what that means. Just focus on the 3 for now. Wherever held, with or without minutes being taken, whether or not votes have cast in any public body. So if 3 of you get together to talk about tax business, it's a public meeting. Full stop. Questions about that? Please take us forward. Now, just because a bunch of you are at a place or on a call or in attendance does not automatically make it a meeting. If no part of the purpose of such a gathering or attendance is the discussion or transaction of any public business, it's not a meeting. So let's say 3 of you attend an outdoors political rally, like you saw in the last political election cycle. Those nice outdoors in the car events. Like I saw some in Michigan, especially. That just because 3 or more of you might be in attendance at a political event doesn't mean it's board of business. Not necessarily. So you can't turn. Now let's talk about when the pandemic is over. Hopefully we're able to do things like we used to. If you all go to a baseball game together, it's not a board event because 4 of you went to a baseball game. That's not how it works. It's got to be about board business. Let's go forward. Okay. Now here's how people get trapped up. And this is sort of the weird era that we're in, because we are allowed to have telephonic and electronic meetings like we never were. Okay. All public bodies meetings shall be open except meetings of the General Assembly, not subject to FOIA. Closed meetings. There are such a thing as closed meetings, but there's a set of procedures you have to take before you go into the closed meeting. So the takeaway from here should be, unless you're meeting like you're allowed to meet currently electronically, every meeting should be an open meeting that requires a physical place where people can gather. Now, right now we're in the pandemic, so we have this license to meet freely, more freely, away from each other, from safe locations. We'll talk about what that means. But in general, meetings must include the public, must be open to the public. Let's go forward. Okay. You have to give sufficient notice to the public of the details of the meeting. And here's a list of some of the things that you have to do. You have to post notice on the website if there is a website. You have to post notice in a prominent public location. The office of the clerk of the public body, if such a thing exists, or the chief administrator, if such a thing exists. Yeah, if you're a state body, you've got to post it on the Commonwealth calendar, central calendar that's available for public notices. There's even more steps that have to be taken in addition to those. But if you don't give proper notice to the public, you've already violated FOIA, making the meeting a violation in itself. I'm going to pause here. Questions? go one slide forward, please.
Look, this is Louis. Let me ask a question about that previous slide. Since this is a state level TAC, that burden for posting completely falls on the governor's office in this instance, not in the capacity of the chairs who may be employees of other political subdivisions.
Yes and no. I think the duty to do the actual posting online would be staff, but if you don't tell staff what you're doing, the person who violated would be you for not telling them.
Right. So when you use the word staff, you mean the staff that's been assigned to the committee, not our staff of our separate political body.
Exactly. Exactly right. That's exactly what I mean. Right. So if, let's say your subcommittee wants to meet next Friday. You've got to tell staff with enough time, the governor's staff has been assigned to you, you've got to tell them with enough time, just 3 days, so they can get that meeting properly noticed to the public, or else you can't meet legally. If you don't get confirmation that it's been properly noticed and you continue forward with that meeting, that's now back on you. You and everyone at that meeting will have violated FOIA. Okay, anybody else? Let's go forward, please. The transaction of public business other than by votes at meetings is prohibited. Now, what does that mean necessarily for you? I'm not entirely sure how the mechanics of this committee are going to work, but no, I can't imagine that you would want to take any actions in a subcommittee, but just in case, what I mean by this is whatever the duties of this board, of this commission are, they must be done at public meetings through votes at probably certifying this is the will of the board or the will of TAC. What can't happen is someone just drafts something on their own and submits it to the governor's office and says this is what I think is best. I represent TAC. No, that's got to be, if you draft something that you want TAC to take on as being their its official position, that's got to be presented to the board at a meeting or presented to TAC at a meeting and taken up and approved by a vote at that meeting. Does that make sense? Hopefully it does.
And that same burden passes to each of the subcommittees that are associated with the parent TAC as a body.
Yeah, I think it goes from full TAC to TAC subcommittees down to individuals who are on the subcommittee.
Right.
Okay, great. I think we're starting to fill in the picture a little bit. Good. Let's go forward. Okay. Now here's the wrinkle. That doesn't mean you can't do work outside of board meetings. You don't have to call a meeting and get together on a WebEx call just so you can research. I imagine there's a lot of different people on this board, all sorts of different areas of expertise that you might need to do work between meetings, and you might need to do a little bit of collaboration just to figure out where people are and what they're working on before the next meeting. So let's say that someone needs to research, Lord knows, a recent finding by some international body. Now, two board members might say, look, I think I can work on that. I'm going to work on that. Someone else says they're going to work on it. That's great too. Now, if you two have a phone call and you say, okay, I found this, what'd you find? That's not prohibited. That's fine. Now, if a third person gets in that conversation, now we're talking about 3 people. We get our magic number, and we've got an unintentional meeting. So keep it to one-on-one conversations, and you're fine. Okay?
That would not, you could have it between 2 committee members and the staff person and not violate.
Staff and council do not count towards the count. It's only members who are on TAC itself. Okay, let's go forward. So electronic meetings used to have to go through all sorts of hurdles to go through electronic meetings. You used to have to pass a policy for it. You needed to have a quorum physically assembled, and the people who are not in attendance could call in to join the meeting. Obviously, that's not the way we do it now. The General Assembly, in its budget from last summer, approved language that allowed for the electronic meetings, basically as long as there is a declared state of emergency. There's a bunch of hoops and hurdles that you have to jump through. The hoops and hurdles are in FOIA itself at 3708.2. You'll be reading that anyways, so just pay attention to the electronic meeting statutes, in particular 3708.2, and you should be A-okay. Okay, let's go forward. Again, I just covered most of this. This has really helped out a lot of people had the service of their government interrupted by the pandemic, and this is a measure given to our public bodies to allow them to keep serving the public. It is a privilege to serve your public. It is a tool to be used, not abused. Remember, you're supposed to be working for the government, working for the people. You're supposed to include the people. Do not use it as a way to block out the public. I've heard horror stories from places of some public bodies doing everything they can to exclude the public, and it's just horrible. That's not how it's supposed to work. You should be looking at ways to be more inclusive, to include more voices, not less. So keep that in mind going forward, and I think we'll be okay. I can't imagine that the governor and his staff will allow you to operate in such a way, but I've got to say it just to say it. Let's go forward. Okay. Here goes a hypothetical. I'm going to read through it, and I'll ask the questions, and I will volunteer people from the audience who feel so bold as to venture an answer. At a public meeting, the work group votes to create a subcommittee of 2 board members to confer and make recommendations to report to the governor. Is there a problem with that? Next question. 2 subcommittee members agree to meet over the telephone and discuss business, but they report to the board their discussions. Is this allowed? Why or why not? Anybody want to take any portion of that? First bullet point or second? I am merciless. I will cold call.
I'll take a stab at it. This is Kristen. I feel like the second one would not be allowed, even though it's less than 3. Still 2 of a 2-member subcommittee would be a quorum. So it seems like that would need to be a public meeting instead of a phone call.
Could you say that one more time?
Yeah. So 2 members of a 2-person subcommittee would be a quorum. So they would need to have a public meeting instead of a phone call.
Member Owen knocked this out of the park, home run on the first swing. Remember back to our magic rule of 3, the caveat was 2 if the quorum is less than 2. A 2-person subcommittee, the quorum number is 2. So anytime these people pick up the phone to talk about any kind of board business, it's automatically a board meeting. So what's our solution?
Form larger subcommittee groups.
That's right. Don't have small subcommittees. Your minimum number is 4. Never have a subcommittee is less than 4, even if the membership is just token. If there's that 4th member that never participates. That way you can at least pick up the phone and have a discussion to see where you guys are on certain things. Pretty simple, right? We're working the front end, keeps you from messing up on the back end. All right. Any questions on that before we move on? Go ahead and take a word and we'll have a... Go ahead.
This is Katie. Someone had a question in the chat, so I just thought I'd read that out to you.
Let me go back to the chat. I'm sorry, I missed it.
No, it was to me directly. If you do have
Okay.
a question, it's best if you send it to everyone, but if you send it to me, I'll just read it like this. This is regarding FOIA email requests. And John Bateman just wanted a clarification. Who is responsible for the FOIA email request? The sender or someone else?
I don't know what you, I don't know what you mean.
So
Yeah,
I
guess I was just asking, and I think you already answered the question. Whoever receives the original FOIA request is the one that has to respond to it in some way, shape, or form. They can't just leave it with themselves. So
I think if I understand your question right, if I understand your question right, I think you've gotten it right. If you get a message from somebody, written or oral, in a mail, snail mail, email, a card, whatever it might be, the duty is now on you to do something with it.
thank you.
Perfect. Good question. Very good question.
yeah,
All right,
I think
let's
that
take us forward to Great. Could you take us forward, please? I think we can move on. At a socially distanced charity event, you see two committee members standing together, but still at least 6 feet apart. You pleasantly greet them and make small talk. Is this a meeting under FOIA? Can you make plans to binge watch a new WandaVision episode this weekend? Can you reminisce together about the previous meeting? Anybody want to take any of those questions? And remember, I am without tact or morals. I will cold call.
No, yes, and no.
No, yes, no. Explain your third no, please.
Well, wouldn't reminiscing about a previous meeting be discussing business matters?
Doesn't it depend on what the discussion is?
I guess it would. If it was about business, reminiscing about the business, then no. If it was reminiscing about who was in attendance and what they were wearing, yes.
Perfect. 100% right. Second pitch, second home run. Fantastic. We're doing great today. Anybody have any questions on that or need clarification on those points? Please take us forward. A bike trail developer offers a helicopter tour to any committee members who wish to view the construction of a new bike trail at a state park in Maryland. You and two other members take the helicopter tour, meeting under FOIA. Why or why not? What if the park is in Virginia? Anybody want to take any of those questions? Oh, I see the name Robert Weiss. I'm calling a Robert Weiss.
That's not fair. I don't know. I must say, I think that's not. Let me at least try, okay?
Yeah, I love it. Let me see. Let me hear it.
So let me adventure here. I think it's not related to business in the state of Virginia. Maybe that makes it not a FOIA thing. It's unrelated to their business, to their exact business. Maybe just to try.
I really like your answer. The question, regardless of what the answer is, the analysis you need to do as a board member is, how is this related to our board business, to our TAC business? And if it is, it's a meeting, right?
Yeah.
Or it's related to TAC business, right? But if it isn't, it's not, right? So let's say three of you take this bike, this helicopter tour. Are you now in trouble because of FOIA? So if anybody offers you something, tour, free swag, talk to staff first. Otherwise, perfect answer. How does this relate to your board business? If it doesn't, it's probably not a meeting. If it does, it might be. Now, we can kind of rearrange the facts a little bit and make it more clearly related to TAC, right? If Maryland had a similar committee and they constructed a new facility that was, doing research or producing something that was related to their response to the same issue the TAC is overlooking, then yeah, that probably would be related to your board business, right? But it's kind of hard to see why a bike trail would necessarily be TAC business. Maybe it could be, but probably not. Good answer. Any other input on this one before we move on? Okay, let's go forward. Well, this is a long one. We're only going to do the first half of it first. You write an email to all the other board members sharing the new trailer for Falcon and Winter Soldier. A fellow member responds all, yet another member quickly responds all to the same topic. Is this a meeting for FOIA purposes? Looking at the Tom Krabs. Oh, Louis Lawrence.
Well, I was going to say never hit reply all. That's the easy answer.
Fantastic answer. Fantastic answer. Can you explain why? It's okay if you can't.
Well, it's because you're sending it to all the members, and it puts everybody in a real difficult position of now having to discern whether or not that is public business. Is it covered under FOIA? It just complicates matters. So avoid the problem, or send it.
Never.
Send the question to legal counsel.
Never. No, you're dead on. Do not send emails to everyone in the to line, because someone can accidentally respond all. Now, through in the Falcon and Winter Soldier, so you could say, well, you know, we're not the cinema commission. We're tax, so we're probably not. This probably isn't board business, but it does bring up the question of emails back and forth. Now, some of you are probably saying email. I thought we left the records behind. Well, if you email too much back and forth between 3 members or more, or if you use an online messenger, like a IRC or IRQ chat or something like that, if you do that with 3 or more members in too rapid a fashion, you can turn an email thread into a meeting. I know, nightmare situation. So as we just discussed, the way to avoid this is don't use email to mass contact the entire board. Use the blind copy instead of the to line, and you'll be fine. The blind copy means makes it so that they can only the members who receive it can only respond directly to you, making the conversation one-on-one instead of one with the entire board and then backwards and then forwards. It becomes a one-on-one conversation rather than the group conversation that triggers our rule of 3. So what's our takeaway? Don't use mass email. If you have to, use the blind copy or send it to staff for distribution. Does everyone catch that? Let's go forward. This is actually taken from a Virginia case from 9 years ago. So the key there is the simultaneity inherent in the term of assemblage. So if it's a back and forth exchange of emails, so several emails between 3 or more people, it can be a meeting. Now, if you take us forward again, you can see that you can kind of back into this accidentally without meaning to. In Hill, the emails are written by one member to one recipient, so there was no meeting. But if it's 3 people or more than 3 people, back and forth, now you've gotten to the place where you've gotten to a meeting. Let's go forward, and I promise we'll round this out, and we'll take away this thread too. There was another case, Betsy Shelton, 3 members of the city council used email to discuss the public business. But the shortest interval between emails was more than 4 hours. The longest interval was well over 2 days. So it didn't have the simultaneity like when email can be used like a chat room or like an instant messenger. So just because someone has sent a mass email, that's not the end of the game. Just do yourself a favor and don't respond to it until good and well later. 4 hours or more. Everybody got that? Any questions? Let's go forward, please. What about making decisions by vote over email? Anybody want to take that one? Think you can vote by email? Looking at Shep Moon.
I would guess not.
That's a great guess. No, you can't. Remember that code section we talked about? You have to vote at meetings. So if you can't meet via, or if you can, to vote via email, you'd have to declare that your meeting was done by email, and you have to give the public access to your email. And how would you do that? So you can't legally do it, right? So that's a great guess. You're right. We will not be voting via email. We will vote at meetings. Great. Well done, Mr. Moon. Does the pandemic change this? No, not really. It really doesn't. We still have to vote at meetings, even if they're all electronic meetings. Please take us forward. That's the code section that you'll be looking at when you review FOIA. Please take us forward one more time. Okay. You can't transact public business without a meeting. So if there's no meeting, there's no voting, there's no deciding. You can't conduct an electronic meeting to discuss public business unless you do it properly, like we're doing now. So you have to follow the steps that are in the budget business, budget language. Your staff will handle booking electronic meetings for you. So if you're going to have an electronic meeting, if you're going to meet, just tell staff and they'll set it up for you. Okay? You can separately contact members to ascertain position as long as the communication doesn't become a meeting. So you can't have 3 members or more. You can't have this simultaneous with a quorum. Okay. I think that covers everything. I'll give you a couple more tips, and then we'll hang it up and we'll do our Q&A. Please take us forward. Assume it's all going public. Assume everything you do for this board is going public. Every email back and forth, every comment you make in a report, in a draft, assume it's all going forward. I recommend using the second account just for your public business. I recommend phone calls. One-on-one phone calls are great. I recommend using email staff to distribute your email if they're willing to take that burden on. Otherwise, use that blind copy rule. And I skipped number 2 because I want to end with that one. If you're not sure, reach out and ask questions. There's no way to sanitize a FOIA violation. Once it's out, it's out. So you can only plan. You only plan on the front end to get it right on the back end. Once you've already done it, I can't fix it for you on the back end. I can just argue to the judge and ask you to hit you with a $500 fine instead of the $2,000 fine. That's the best I can do. One more slide, and then we'll take it home. Now that you're on TAC, you have access to request these opinions. I guess you could have as a citizen as well, but if you can't get a hold of your attorney, you can go to the FOIA Council and ask them for written advice as well. And there's a similar shield. If you rely upon their written advice, you're in better shape than if you didn't get advice in the first hand. So again, pick up that phone, call your attorney, contact the FOIA Council, get your advice beforehand. Don't guess. Be sure, then take your answer. That's all I got. Because you guys are the committee chairs and the more in leadership positions, I'm going to ask Ann to share with you my personal contact information, at least my professional contact information. If you have questions, you can email me, you can call me, we can walk through whatever. We can get it right, at least try to. I know we went through a lot, but this is the cost of doing business. You'll be okay. I've been in this role for 6 years. I've got 30 different boards and agencies. I had one of them get popped in a FOIA violation. It's because I had them redact one line too many, never went to court. We gave the guy what he was due, and everything was fine. That's how we're going to handle it. We'll be just fine. Final questions or anything else? I guess I'll turn it back over to Ann and Katie for however they want to handle this.
This is Louis. I've got one question for you.
Mm-hmm.
For planning district commissions to convene, we've got to read the declaratory 3708.2. What is this body, and do the subcommittees have to read the same type of declaratory statement at the start of every single meeting to convene an electronic meeting?
Probably. It probably does. And as far as what is this body, I think it's a commission called together by the governor. I would call it a public body.
So would we follow the 3708.2?
Yes, you must.
Right. So that means every subcommittee is going to need to have that language to read before every meeting.
I believe I sent it to you in the email that went to all the subcommittees. There was one of the files was kind of a sequence of events to prepare for a meeting, talking about the setting up the meeting in advance and that it needed to be recorded and those kinds of things. And the second and third page of that, maybe the fourth too, were the declaratory statement that Secretary Strickler read before the 14 December TAC, which came from Paul Klugel. And so I think what I'll do to confirm that that is correct, Justin, is send that to you. I think it is, but you may want to tweak the words or recommend that we tweak them in some way. So,
and who
I'm not going to override Paul Kugelman. I have a tremendous respect for him. He's actually my senior in the office, or one of my seniors in the office. I am not going to conflict anything Paul said. He's great.
Yeah, it's a lengthy document.
I will. What I will do though is I wrote a kind of cheat sheet for my agencies, and I will send that to you, and you can circulate that to the committee.
That will be helpful.
It's kind of a checklist. It's like 1.5 pages. It's very digestible.
And one more follow-up related to that. Who has the burden? Is it staff that has the burden to record?
Yes. I mean, as the committee chairs will be grateful that you remind them, are you recording? But I mean, we know we're supposed to be recording the meetings. So
so that
staff knows it's supposed to be done, and but you're reminding them and helping them remember that will be helpful, because some of the staff are quite familiar with how to run this. Katie does it all the time as an example. Others are less familiar with the ins and outs of this particular system, and so it's a little more challenging. I would put myself in that category. I can figure it out, but it might take me a few minutes. So,
but the committee chairs are not. What I guess that's the two-part question. If it's not recorded, are the committee chairs responsible for that non-recording happening? I don't expect you to know the answer to that. I'm just asking.
I'd love to give you a clear answer on that, but the answer is, whose fault is it? And if staff is not at that meeting, if that meeting is not staffed, someone at that meeting has to record it. And it's not on staff for not necessarily being at that meeting. If you hold a meeting without staff, whoever's at that meeting has to record it. If staff has been delegated that and staff doesn't turn on the recorder, it's probably on staff.
Okay, that helps. Thank you.
Sure.
And this is Kristen. As we've gone through this, I've just been thinking I think it would be helpful if we could have like a checklist, like a cheat sheet, like Justin was mentioning, to distribute to all of the subcommittees, just to ensure we're all following the same process. Like if staff would prefer that they send out emails for us so that we, don't potentially mess it up, or if they don't want to do that, like having the procedures for the TAC outlined so that everyone's following the same process. And then if there are these certain things that we need to be doing, like reading off that language, having it all in one form where it's in front of us every single time, so there are really no questions. I think that would be really helpful for all of the different committees, just to make sure that regardless of who the staff person is or the chairperson, that we're following all the same steps every single time.
So the committee chairs and staff have that. Based on this presentation, we will update it some because there are steps that we know need to be added, particularly as to how to set up the meetings. We've actually had some conversations this afternoon about how to best do that, and to make sure we have the process in place. But we have done a document like that, and it has been distributed to the chairs, and it has the language in it for the 3708.2. So we'll be grateful for Justin's checklist, because that'll help us. But we may find that we want to add more things to it. And as I said, some of the things we learned today we'll flesh out and make it more thorough, but it does exist, and the subcommittee chairs have it.
Okay, perfect.
And to Kristen's point, when you resend it out with any updates, would you mind including the vice chairs on that list as well? Or we can just rely on our chairs to share so we can support?
Sure, no problem. Yep.
Yeah, John Bateman here. I noticed my subcommittee chairperson isn't on this call, so I just want to make sure they're aware of everything that was contained in this meeting.
Okay. They are an old hand at public boards. However, we'll make sure they're updated on what transpired here.
And I'd like to point out something to you.
Sure.
As required, this meeting was recorded, so you could, anybody who was not here, you could just have them watch this recording, and they should be up to date.
As discussed, and we're also going to do this for every subcommittee meeting, also, as they first convene, so that all the members get the same training, and it will also be recorded, and they can watch it if they need to, if they are not unable to be present.
Works for me.
May I ask a question? This is Robert Weiss.
Sure, of course.
Yeah, so in our subcommittee, I'm assuming that it requires to edit documents by the group. And so I wonder if it's permissible to use a software like or services like Google or Google Drives or something like that in Google Docs, rather than sending around Word documents to receive feedback. And if so, can we do that from our own? Like, I work at the university account, or do we have to organize that through Anne and her staff?
It's kind of a couple different questions at once, and I'm not going to police you how you operate day to day. If you don't choose to use a separate account for your TAC work, that's your choice. You know, that's between you and whoever is running that server for that email account. As far as using a service like, you know, some sort of Google service to host a document so multiple people can work on it at the same time, I think that's fine. What you don't want to do is have multiple people in the document at the same time. Some of those products allow 3, 4, 5 more people to be in a document at the same time, and that's where you kind of run into that meeting, that simultaneous unintentional meeting. So what some of my other groups have done, some other public bodies have done, is they've when they use these services, they make it clear, I'm going to be in this document, you know, Saturday from 2 to 4. No one else being there at the same time, or me and my partner that I'm working with are going to be working on this, you know, Monday from 4 to 6, and then we're out. So don't. You could try a schedule system like that. You could try to just leave it to one person at a time. If you see someone else is on it, don't continue with it, or you see 2 people are in it, don't continue with it. But it's a kind of up to you to figure out your protocols of how you're going to work.
Thank you. And then if I may ask a quick follow-up question of a different topic, because you mentioned the word persons a lot, and not members. So for example, if my co-chair and I talk to 2 other people who are not members of the subcommittee or TAC, that is okay. That doesn't qualify as a meeting, right?
Correct.
Okay, thanks.
No, that is key to understand. That's a great question. It gives you a little flexibility. Think about the things you guys can do in pairs, interview people, contact people who've done research in the required fields. There's a lot of stuff that you can do working in one-on-one pairs, as long as it's not, as long as you haven't hit that quorum number, right? I know we went through a lot today. I know it's kind of intimidating, but we have a lot of boards and agencies and commissions and all sorts of things, and we get it right 99% of the time. And it's not, the more you do it, the more it'll make sense. Don't be intimidated by this. Just understand this is not a list of what you can't do. It's just a list of what you need to do to make sure you're doing it right. You'll execute it. You'll do just fine.
This is Kristen. I have one more question, kind of to go off of what Robert was just talking about. If we are like two members of a subcommittee and ask a question, like say we're working on a project and ask a question of another TAC member, but is not a member of our subcommittee, does that become a public meeting since we're all part of the TAC, but it's not, like, we're not all part of the same subcommittee?
So the answer is probably technically no, but remember that liberal construction that we first talked about. Even though the answer is probably technically no, if you're going to be two people and you need to bring in a third person, maybe it's just one of you picks up the phone and talks to that third person rather than bringing that person into your Zoom call or whatever you're going to use to work together. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
See, you kind of building these checks to make sure you don't even get close to violating. Okay, and I'm looking at my one pager here.
Okay.
And I'm looking at my one pager here, and I'm just kind of noticing a couple of these things are out of date. So I'm going to update it over the weekend, and I'll send it to you hopefully Monday morning.
Okay, excellent. Thank you, Justin.
Sure, happy to help.
Are there other questions? Right. Well, if there are none at this point, you will hear Justin again when you're in your subcommittees soon. And so if things come up between now and then, you have the opportunity to ask again or to contact him, and I'll send you his contact information so that particularly the committee chairs can reach out to him if they feel they have a challenging situation. But I think it's certainly helpful, Justin. Thanks for your time and going over this in such detail and providing the scenarios to help us think through, where we might find ourselves in a questionable circumstance and how to stay away from that. We appreciate it.
Happy to help, and hopefully this allows you to get a comfort level up and get the work done that you need to do. You guys were called together for a reason, so I'm sure you guys have important stuff you need to get done.
Yeah, we do. Yes, we do. So I think if there are no other questions, we'll thank everyone for their attendance this afternoon and wish you a good weekend, hopefully a safe weekend. And it'd be nice if the sun came out, but I don't think that's going to happen. So maybe we'll get lucky.
Not for a little while.
Yep.
All right, guys, take care. Be safe.
Yep. Thank you, everyone. Take care. We have several updates for you that we'll get out based on this meeting. So thanks so much. Thank you, Katie, for hosting and managing.